Welcome to Data, Dollars, and Dynasty, the podcast where data meets destiny. 3 voices, 1 mission, using data to build a dynasty. Next.
I think that we have to do as much as we can to help our students fully understand the opportunities that are going to be presented as a result of AI. What we like about this Jack and Jill variant is that it's mother-led. So we see the mothers basically being the police, where you get the parents involved, and then there's some ownership of the process that resides in the parents' hands, if you will. Each student receive a certificate in AI fundamentals via our partner Data Camp. They're exposed to 10 different Gen AI tools, including chatgpt.
Plus,
with AI displacing a ton of workers, we thought that one of the protected fields or industries was specifically going to be healthcare. So with that being in mind, I would think that the number of women involved in the workforce would actually go up as opposed to going down. But again, obviously this is showing the opposite.
also,
Unemployment rates are staggering. Tie yourself into networks. Try to look for programs like Jack and Jill and Data Gen Scholars, and try to just get around people who can pull you to that next level, because oftentimes it's not about what you know, it's about who you know.
and
There's so many different programs that Jack and Jill offer that I'm just so incredibly proud of. But I didn't mention earlier that we also emphasize with our children the importance of creating opportunities for yourself. We encourage our kids to be entrepreneurs, and we emphasize the fact that that's what is going to be needed.
now welcoming your hosts, Jeremy Sr., JJ, and Jayden.
Welcome to the 13th episode of podcast series Data, Dollar, Dynasty. I'm your host, Jeremy Williams Sr., and I'm joined by 4 persons today. I have my co-hosts and sons, JJ Williams
Welcome back, everyone.
and Jayden Williams.
Yep, what's going on? Pleasure as always.
And we have one of our colleagues from episode number 2, Claudette Keen. Claudette is our Chief of Programs for our Data Gen Scholar program.
Hello, welcome back.
Thank you, Claudette. And we have an extremely special guest. I've known this guest for, thinking about 30 years. Her name is Madetric Naye Wood.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, Naye. She goes by Naye as her nickname, so we'll refer to her as Naye on the podcast today. First, I wanted to open up the podcast, and we don't necessarily do this a ton. I wanted to dedicate today's podcast to a special person. I think last podcast I talked about these doves on a stop sign, and these doves represented to me a change of direction or an opportunity. When I was 19 years old, it was this guy. He was the manager of a restaurant. I think many of us have frequented this restaurant. It's called Burger King. He gave me an opportunity. Essentially, he hired my brother and I on the spot. His name was Curtis Arnold. And when I think about full circle, I think I talked about how life works and how things sometimes are circular and how doors open up and how opportunities manifest. Curtis gave me an opportunity to eventually meet this young lady, Madetric, let's call her Naye, and her twin sister, Faye. Faye is the mother of JJ and Jayden. So if it wasn't for Curtis, today would not be possible. So I want to first dedicate this episode to Curtis. And I also think a lot about, we talked about this last podcast as well, just the numbers of people who are just struggling mightily. I'm not going to even think about the globe, but let's just think about the U.S. There are a lot of people struggling mightily. So I want to give this episode up as a dedication to those people and just really put on wax our dedication in 2026 to do everything we can to help as many people who are struggling as possible via our for-profit Sandai Global and our nonprofit Sandai Cares. So that said, I want to get started with the podcast. We're going to have maybe 3 different sections of today's podcast, pretty much following the same flow that we've had previously on previous podcasts. First part is just going to be me summarizing key success for us this week. This is actually kind of weird for us. We've never done podcasts back to back like this. I think we typically do about 5 to 6 weeks break between our podcasts. This is the first podcast that we've done successively in terms of like a week later. We just did 12 last week, and now we're doing 13 this week. But we do have a couple of critical updates or essential updates we want to share just from this week that I think are going to really set the tone for us next year in 2026. So I'll go over those updates, and then we're going to talk to Naye about a program you've heard us talk about on at least 2 or 3 podcasts now. It's called Jack and Jill of America, a tremendous program, a mother-led program. She's going to come here today and talk to us about that program. And we're going to, within that conversation, sprinkle in some dialogue exchange with Jack and Jill and then our data gen scholar, Jack and Jill variation. And we'll talk about just how Jack and Jill is looking to integrate AI into their learning framework for their students. We'll then move over to a couple of videos. Actually, it's one video that we're going to share, and we have some data that we've gathered from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which just shine light on the immense issue we have around Black unemployment in terms of our youth. We got some critical data we're going to share there, and we have a video that we're going to talk about that relates to Black women in the workforce. We'll have some conversation there across the collaboration here, those of us on the podcast. So that said, this week started off, I'm not going to say it was rocky. Anyone who does entrepreneurship knows that sometimes things don't always go as you plan. So I would say we had a couple of hiccups early in the week. I'm not going to go too many details around what those hiccups are and what the magnitude of those hiccups were. But I will say by Wednesday, things come in droves. Sometimes things trickle in. Sometimes you have in business no success for months, and then you can have an abundance of success in days. And I think for us, we've had like trickle in success all year. We haven't necessarily had a desert where we didn't realize some accomplishment in terms of like month to month. But this past Wednesday, I think I woke up to a text, or maybe it was 9 in the morning, and I get this strange text from this young lady, and I didn't recognize her name, but she said she wanted to talk to me about one of our programs, and talked to her about it. Didn't necessarily know before the conversation who she was, but it turned out she was a principal of one of our schools here in Fairfax County. Again, my company, we're headquartered out of Fairfax, Virginia. It's about 8 miles just to the west of Washington, D.C. It's one of the largest municipal areas in the nation. But this principal, she represents Fairfax County schools, and she was interested in just seeing if we had any solutions to training teachers. And again, via our nonprofit, we do a lot of upskilling work with high school students, college students. We've talked exhaustively here on these podcasts about our Data Gen Scholar program, but we do have 2 other offerings with that Data Gen, naming one Data Gen for government, and that's a specific program aimed at government employees. And we have another Data Gen for her, a program aimed at women. This principal, she was interested in learning about Data Gen for her and Data Gen for Gov. So we talked, I showed her a couple of things. She loved it. And now she's putting us in motion to talk to her superintendent first part of the year next year around upskilling teachers. And it turns out ChatGPT, this is the premier conversational AI tool that OpenAI has offered up to the world. They have a variation of ChatGPT just for teachers. And looks like these teachers are also using 3 other Gen AI tools that Fairfax County wants help with in terms of upskilling teachers on a consistent basis. And they think our product might be able to help. That was a tremendous win for us. Now, of course, we have to do some preparation. We'll spend the majority of this month getting ready for that conversation. I think it's going to be held in January. And then the second thing I want to talk about relates to our Data Gen Scholar program. We started this program up a couple of years ago. We've had a couple of cohorts. Again, Jack and Jill is going to be privy to a different variation of our flagship program, but flagship program, we currently have about 70 students in that program. And we've just, since we started this second cohort up back in June, we've been trying to figure out the best way to just enlighten kids consistently and keep them engaged. Initially, it started about doing some type of, we call this gathering. We called it the Maze of Tomorrow. And I think back on podcasts, maybe it was 6, we had our students, Teo, and we had Sam, 2 kids, young Black males who have businesses. We talked to them about this maze, and this maze concept was really our idea of introducing Data Gen Scholar to leaders in the Fairfax County and Loudoun County areas. And as a team, we had talked, Claudette and her subordinates, and then of course the boys here, we had talked at length about just doing something in person, inviting out all these teachers and local leaders and having like tables around the room where our students would present to these individuals what they were learning. Now for us, this is a way for us to try to monetize our investment, because again, everything that we've done through Data Gen Scholar has been self-invested. We haven't solicited any money from anybody as of yet. So every penny is something that we have to contribute to make these programs a success. That includes paying the students to learn. That's a whole other podcast, by the way. But we had talked about potentially having, again, this Maze of Tomorrow setup, spending about $10K to entertain all these different persons. But then we said, okay, can we think about this differently? Is there a different way for us to consider doing this? And I just recall a couple years ago, Mark Zuckerberg, this is the CEO of Facebook, talking about his concept he had called the metaverse. And I started thinking about that metaverse conversation I've been privy to 2 years ago. And I said, I wonder, could we do something with the metaverse? Could we create some kind of a world, online world, which would enable our students to essentially just log in, and rather than having to necessarily visit us to obtain content, to be able to go into this world like it's a game and make that happen. So I entrusted Jayden with figuring this out. So this was September. Jayden, what month was this when you started this journey?
September, maybe late August.
Yeah, so we started that journey and we just couldn't figure out how to best do it. But about 3 weeks ago, we landed on the right option, if you will. And as of last week, we now have a metaverse. We think this metaverse is going to be the next leg in terms of how we offer up the program from a learning perspective and from a fundraising perspective. And then we think it's going to be a fun way to engage potential funders and give them an easy way to understand how our program works. Did you guys want to say anything on that, JJ, Jayden?
Yeah, I would just say it's going to be an exciting adventure. I mean, it's a virtual world, everyone. So we're looking to have everybody, no matter what location you're at, you'll be able to log into this virtual environment and, of course, learn about the program in full detail. So it's very exciting.
You guys could probably add some more color there, just because they don't have any idea what we're talking about. But a meta world, from Zuckerberg's perspective, he sees this as the way to learn tomorrow, to shop. So it's just akin to putting on some virtual reality goggles, really sitting on your sofa and going to school and learning. So we've created a world where our students just log in and they can visit different rooms. We have 10 rooms in the world. Each room has a different learning journey. So kids can sit there and watch videos in that room via their computers as avatars. And we have this thing set up on a beach. Claudette, she's a fan of water and waves, so we try to incorporate that into the journey. Me personally, I like yachts. I want a yacht one day. So we're going to embed a yacht into this thing. We're going to have about another 8 or 9 rooms added in about 2 weeks where kids can just visit the yacht and go into that yacht and then go in different rooms on that yacht and learn stuff. We think it's a cool way to engage students. When you visit it, it's like a house almost. Like you got pictures of us on the walls. It's just something fantastic. And I've seen variations of this thing where people can actually go in rooms and shop. So from an entrepreneurial standpoint, if you have a store, rather than you having a brick and mortar store, you could have folks visit your metaverse store and it's set up just like a store. Clothes are folded up on shelves, shoes, purses, however you want it. You can go in there and actually look at the items and turn them around. I think that's the AI aspect of it. But it's a cool way to offer up products and services.
That sounds good. My only question, how do you assess the retention of the information learned through that megaverse?
Well, you probably don't assess that immediately. So for us, kids aren't necessarily learning there. Our metaverse is really a place for, say, somebody like yourself, and we want to maybe advertise our program to you. You would just log into it too, because it's viewable via our website. And you would go into that world. You can go into a room and watch a video on what our program is, like how does it work. So in each room, you have a different subject that you're talking about. So these videos are no more than maybe 2 or 3 minutes long, but just really like explainer videos. And for our students, though, it gives us a way to have them tell the world what they're learning in our program. Like I said, we thought about this Maze of Tomorrow from an in-person perspective. It's really around putting students in front of people, letting the students service the product, which would then in turn help us fundraise. We see this Maze of Tomorrow the same way. It's just about letting people go into this world and just watch videos and learn. That's what it's about. Now, like I say, I think your question really is around retention. That's something that I think people hadn't probably figured that out yet. We're not necessarily looking at it from a teaching standpoint. We think that from our perspective, having Zoom calls and having that direct relationship with a person is probably the best way to go in terms of how we see upskilling. But potentially down the road, who knows? This might be something that we invest heavily in as a way to reduce our costs and become more efficient.
So you see it as a tool to help present information, not necessarily teach, but just introduction of what it is that you want them to know in little snippets of
Yes, ma'am.
small presentations. Okay.
Like you guys, like Jack and Jill, let's say you guys had a world, right? You could have 10 rooms in it, and the first room could be history. We'll have to show this to you offline, but you go into that room and the avatar literally can sit down in a chair. And then you hit the screen. It's like a big TV screen in front of you. And it plays a video of your founder or whoever the leaders are talking about the program.
We've had something similar to that when we were in COVID and we had our virtual conferences. I remember attending a regional conference. It might have been a national conference where it was set up just like this platform and you can go in and out of the different sessions. And there was also a vendor area where you can go and shop and see the items that you can purchase, paraphernalia from the different vendors, just like you would if you were at an actual conference. And it was set up in a virtual field. So I think I have a good picture of what you're talking
that's
about.
What it is. That's what it is. They say they're cheap to put in place. So just for us, in terms of that value add and return on investment, in terms of giving the funder, because again, on that nonprofit side, it's all about fundraising. So giving funders an easy way to just learn about the program. And then for us, we have some very intelligent kids in our program. It's about putting those kids in front of people. Less about us talking. Ask the students what they're getting. And if you feel good about what you're hearing, give us a check. That's how that works. All right. So that said, I want to jump over into the meat. We're going to call you the meat and potatoes of today's discussion, Naye. I want you to introduce yourself. Just talk about who you are and what makes you you, academia, your business, and your choice of career, all that stuff. You can talk about that here. And then we will talk about Jack and Jill. And I know that the group here has a few questions for you there. So we'll just queue up some questions. And once we get through this, we'll jump over to this video.
Well, thank you for having me. Again, I'm Madetric Wood. I am originally from Tallahassee, Florida. I am a mother, I'm a daughter, I'm a wife, business owner, and I am a member of the Jack and Jill of America Incorporation, a member of the Treasure Coast chapter. So although I am not a representative of the executive board, the national executive board, I am a part of a local chapter stationed in South Florida, Treasure Coast, along the east coast of Florida. We include the Indian River, St. Lucie, and Martin County. We have a chapter of about 26 mothers. We have about a total of 50 kids, including 22 teens, also fathers. We can't forget about our fathers. Going back to who I am, Jack and Jill, I'll come back to it, but I am a mother of three. I have a 26-year-old, I have a 21-year-old, and a 16-year-old, and a new grandmother. So I'm extremely proud of that. I am a adult and geriatric nurse practitioner. I own my own business over 15 years. I have a practice that focuses on primary care, what you would call the standard or just a regular primary care where you would receive services in the office, but I also do house calls. So I am certified to make house calls, and that is to take the primary care into the homes of those individuals that can't go out of the home and seek medical care. I also go into assisted living facilities where you have individuals that can't live at home anymore. They're not safe there, so they go into a facility where they have 24-hour nursing and private duty that is able to meet their needs. So I do take primary care there as well. Going back now to Jack and Jill, I have been a member of the Treasure Coast chapter for over 14 years, where two of my older children have graduated out. They have benefited greatly from their membership in Jack and Jill. How I became a member of the organization is that I was invited by a sorority sister and a mother that was a member of the organization. And that's how you get your membership through the organization, is you have to be invited by another mother. You have to go through the usual membership process, orientation to the organization, where you get an understanding of how the organization works and what their focus is, which is on raising the next generation of African American leaders while caring for all children. We accomplish this through programming that the mothers initiate in the chapter level in order to expose their children to philanthropic activities, civic engagement, legislative activities. We do financial modules with our kids, leadership modules. We encourage public speaking and to be comfortable in their skin. We teach them their cultural history. The national organization and the regional organization does a great job with guiding each mother member in chapter. Now, at the chapter level, it should be stated that we have leadership at the chapter level that works with the regional and the national level in order to make sure the members and the children get what they need as far as membership and the activities from Jack and Jill. Again, my children has benefited greatly. I have one left. We have a year and a half left in the organization before I tenure into a graduate mom. Our children are referred to after they graduate out as legacies. And so they do have the opportunity to reconnect with the organization once they become parents. So they automatically, their children, if graduated out in good standing, can automatically be a part of the organization and take advantage of all of that the organization has to offer.
Wow. And I think from our research, it's about 50,000 families across 71 chapters, right?
Yes. And we have 9 regions, United States, 7, I'm sorry. The areas are divided into Southeast region, you have the North region, you have the West. They encompass the different states. The Southeastern region is the biggest region, and that region encompasses Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee. Every region has their conferences, and we come together nationally for national convention every 2 years. The makeup is similar to your sororities and fraternities, but this is a family-oriented organization. I am a member of the first and finest Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, but the membership does not compare to my Jack and Jill of America membership.
AKA,
AKA,
for the audience,
yes.
For the audience,
Yes.
if you don't know what that means.
Yes.
AKA for short.
And we do have several members who are a part of Greek organizations that hold membership in Jack and Jill of America. And many of our children go on to become members of those Greek organizations. And so I like to believe and to brag about how our children early on, we try to teach them the importance of leadership, because that's what those organizations are for. They are for service to all mankind. You don't join them for the colors. You don't join them for the letters. You join them to give back. That is a way that Jack and Jill of America has reinforced that into our children. The philanthropic aspect of your life should be important, and that should be one of your number one focus, as well as becoming a productive citizen. Giving back is most important.
Fantastic. So we're going to open it up for questions. Guys, got any questions for Naye?
I'm going to jump straight to the point with this one today. So you've been with Jack and Jill for basically almost a lifetime at this point. So with that being said, I mean, what we do here at Sandai with a lot of our programs, it's all about upskilling the youth of America, right? And of course, not just America, but also around the globe. But what's one thing that you're seeing, I guess you could say, if you had to choose one specific skill or one specific trait that you're noticing that all the youth encompass, that once they join Jack and Jill, they receive the training or the guidance they need to get that trait, and then once they graduate, they are now using it to be successful in their lives. So what would that one thing be if you had to choose one?
I would say the public speaking and orating aspect of the organization. We focus a lot on oratorical with our children because, as you know, being able to communicate, self-express is very important when you become an adult. And so many times children, they just don't have that self-confidence. They don't have that ability to express themselves effectively and to control a room or control the conversation and be able to express themselves and be effective with that. So that's one of the things that we as mothers try to emphasize and give our children the opportunity to do. And we have oratorical contests. We have them on a chapter level, region, and a national level. So these children go on to orate even outside of the organization in their schools and colleges. Many of them become effective communicators, attorneys, doctors, politicians, whatever it is, advocates. that they decide to take their skill, we try to make sure that we instill in them that their ability to communicate will be the most important skill that they learn.
Got you.
To follow up with that, I have a two-part question of my own for you, Auntie Naye. Starting off, I would say that you've been with the organization for a long time now. So first question would be, how has the organization changed since you first started with it? And then how do you guys continue to evolve the program to ensure that the students are learning new skills and they don't get stale as the times change?
Great question. I became a member 14 years ago, and the programming has evolved along with how we as people have evolved. We've tried to incorporate a lot of what the children are experiencing today and expose them to the different aspects of how the world works now. We do a stock market challenge with them because we understand that being able to invest in generational wealth is very important to everybody, but especially the Black community. We try to make it fun. I've seen, and I've been a stock market challenge mentor, meaning that for a whole year, you work annual increments and you mentor the teens and the children in your chapter with navigating the game of the stock market. So we work with the children on different stock options and investments and teach them, we give them play money and encourage them to go out and buy and research stock and know what a bull market is, what a bear market is, and to take chances, not with their own money, but with play money so that they can build that confidence in order to do it eventually when they're able to on their own. And we've seen a lot of success with that. Another change that I've noticed is we as parents expose our children to the different fields, professional fields, and we mentor them. So we have parents who sign up for our organization mentor program, and the children are able to sign up and state what profession they want to go into and do. And I've seen where there's a lot of children who are expressing wanting to be creators, social media creators, and want to do a lot with social media. So now we have parents that are doing that are now being able to mentor the children in how to do that and be successful with it. So that's something, of course, that we have not seen in the past. And so because of the way that it's going, the future, the possibilities of that being an option now, we're making sure our children have that exposure.
Okay, so are these parents social media professionals themselves, or are they just kind of committed to learning alongside their children?
Most of them are individuals who are doing it, or at least have some contact with individuals who do know how to do it and who are a success with it, making money, creating content that is positive, and are able to mentor the children into doing that if that's what they want to do.
That's very cool.
Got any questions, Claudette?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, I know that you started the journey with Jack and Jill, 15 years ago? I'm just curious to know, when you were growing up as an educated professional yourself, what would you ask yourself? Because I know that you didn't yourself go through Jack and Jill, but you yourself, if you weren't given that invitation by someone of Jack and Jill status, what would you say is important for young Black individuals to be learning right now?
Thank you for that question. And yes, you're right. I was not a Jack and Jill member. I didn't even know anything about the organization until I moved to South Florida. And there had been a chapter in Tallahassee for years. As a matter of fact, one of the founding members of the organization, of the chapter in Tallahassee, went on to become a national president of the organization, Dr. Eva Wanton. Some of you may be familiar with her.
SBI.
Jeremy, yes. Well, Dr. Eva Wanton, she was in the education. Dr. Mobley, Dean Mobley was, yes. And not sure if Dr. Mobley was Jack and Jill, but I know Dr. Eva Wanton was. But my exposure to the organization has given me the insight to see how firsthand the children that matriculate through the organization are given the foundation that many of the other children that don't matriculate through the organization don't have. Does not mean that by any means that they can't be successful or that they're not successful. I just know the advantages that children are afforded through the Jack and Jill organization is by far overwhelmingly put in place to set these children up for success and to be able to see and experience opportunities that others don't have the opportunity to do. So with that being said, my advice to those who have not had the opportunity to be a part of Jack and Jill organization is for the parents to expose their children to public speaking and the importance of being able to communicate effectively, and to also expose them to things like data gen, AI, what is going on with AI, how AI is going to possibly affect their careers in any way. They need to be able to know how it will affect them and be able to have a leg up on how they can take hold of their future by becoming AI certified and knowing how to effectively use AI in order to help them with their career so that they can stand out above their cohorts and know that, hey, if I have this certification, if I have this knowledge, then this gives me the leg up on somebody that does not. So that would be my recommendation.
I would even add to that, Claudette. We talked about this, I think, in podcast number 3, just the importance of parents exposing geniuses in kids. I think it's up to that parent to be able to spot what that kid's potential talent is early. Now, what I would say, I didn't know Naye. I think I met you around, 17?
16. I was 16.
When did you come to BK?
I was 16. I just turned 16.
All right. How long did it take you to become production lead?
Oh, I was about 17. I was getting ready to graduate high school, so it was about my senior year. I was going into my senior
year.
year. So a year and a half, yes.
All right, so the reason I'm asking these questions, some kids just got it, man. I think I talked in podcast number 3 about, I just think you can look at a kid around 7 or 8 and know what kind of kids you got. Just look at their work ethic. It don't take a lot to identify this. Jack and Jill, to me, they're like at the top of the food chain in terms of they're selectively targeting a certain group of people to nurture and develop. But there's 43 million African Americans in America. It's based on 12.5% of the population, 350 million people. I'm going to venture to say at least 15 million of that number of kids. And what we're going to talk about here in a second is 20% of that 15 million, let's say about 5 million of those kids are 16 to 19. We're saying 20% of that 5 million can't get work. And I don't care what anybody does, right? You can have these different organizations that target certain population. There's a much bigger issue at play here. That's where I think it comes back to that parent. And I do understand that social economics plays a role in that. Educational aptitude plays a role in that. But we got to figure this stuff out as a people. But your question to me is really, how can we spot talent in youth, even if they're not in a certain program? How do you make it possible for anybody to obtain that nurturing? That's what we have to try to figure out as a people, which is why I just think what we're trying to do here with Data Gen, Scholar, Jack and Jill, and any of our Data Gen initiatives, we're trying to find a way to do that with technology, to make it easy for people to get skills. You talk about this social media stuff, Naye, I'm going to really say you're wasting your time in that. Because now you have AI influencers. You got AI that's influencing people now. You have no idea looking at AI. So that social media influencer stuff, you're competing with AI now. The kids have to know this. We're probably exchanging content with AI influencers right now. You don't know it. So that's where we're headed with social media. So I just think that's where us as a unit, and I'm not just segregating us as blacks, but we're going to talk about some data here in a second. Black women are losing jobs rapidly. The youth can't get jobs, and AI is just starting. AI just came to the party. And so for us, we want to figure out a way to figure out what kind of programs can be offered, proliferated. I think these experiences have to be given to these students around what data they need to know. And I think that's where this data gen comes in. I'm even thinking too, team, we need to put more data, more why into our first part of our programs. I think this Jack and Jill experience, I want to make sure we put a bunch of why in front. Like, where are the jobs at? Which jobs are needed tomorrow? We need to do something on can't get jobs. I'm not sure if this is just going to be a 1 hour or something that we put together, but we need to put that out there so these kids can see this stuff. What are the challenges going to be for us getting jobs tomorrow? And then we have to also think about this. What I love about what Jack and Jill does is they expose kids to this political system. With the current administration, we're in a new era now. We got a lot of programs that have been terminated that are pro-Black, which has contributed to a lot of Black people losing jobs. Now, the question for us becomes, are those policies going to be reversed? We don't have the answer to that. So I just think a lot of what they do with the educating the youth on being involved in that political system is key. like being able to communicate and articulate concepts and ideas with passion.
Can I add something to that,
Yeah, go ahead,
Jeremy?
Nate.
You said, and it's important that I state and emphasize the way the organization was founded. Jack and Jill of America was developed, organized, put into motion in 1938 in Philadelphia. And it was founded by women of color because their children did not have the same opportunity as the children of other cultures in color. So they decided to come together, mothers decided to come together and create something for their own, for their children and their children's friends, so that they can have the opportunities and the things that the other children were being exposed to that their children just couldn't participate in. 1938, obviously you had segregation and you had racism during that time. And so they had to find a way to give their children the opportunities that other children had, but because their children was of a different color, could not participate or could not do. And so that is what we as people of color need to focus on and lean on right now, because we need to be able to create for our own and make sure that for everybody, it's important that, and the organization is for the betterment of all children. Please do not get me wrong. Do not misunderstand me when it comes to that aspect. But we especially need to make sure that our children are taking care of our children, little ones, you know. So
yeah,
this
you
book,
guys are
you know,
grooming leaders. That's how I look at that. You have directly taking care of other kids, and you have indirect. Indirect to me looks like we're raising kids to be leaders. I talk a lot about being passionate about causes. So if you guys have, I don't know how many kids are in Jack and Jill. What do we take? 10,000? How many kids are in Jack and Jill?
I don't know the exact, I can get the exact demographics for you.
Yeah, I'll be curious. Just say it's 10,000 kids in there. So if you raise 10,000 leaders, indirectly, you're going to affect a lot of people. That's the methodology behind this. So it's never just one person doing all the work. I just think for us, it's akin to going out there planting some crops. Plant some collard greens, you plant some corn, some potatoes. But end of the day, all that stuff is harvested and it has a purpose. So you can have the same kind of aspect when you look at students and kids. You're planting some doctors, you're planting some lawyers, you're planting whatever you're planting. But the idea is that you're going to harvest these kids and they're going to do something great with the talent based on what you guys are providing to them in terms of a structured leadership. But I just think, again, ultimately, though, while we're going to do our program, I want to talk about this program here in a second before we move forward to this video. And I'm going to let either you, JJ, or Claudette talk about the Data Gen Scholar Jack and Jill program. And I can come in and get some color on that. And then we can have some questions there to Naye in terms of what she sees this being able to do beyond the 3 chapters that we're in now. Then we can move over to this video.
Now, for a quick commercial break to share some key program insights.
At Data Gen Scholar, we're redefining education for the next generation of thinkers. Students master data literacy and generative AI, build real projects, and earn while they learn. We're not waiting for the future of education. We're building it. Learn more at datagenscholar.com.
Now back to the podcast.
Claudette, did you want to talk about the program?
The Jack and Jill Data Gen Scholars Program is the 4-month program that we've started, and we're pretty much offering the same concepts like our accelerated program, like our flagship program. We're offering the same things like data and AI, teaching our students about those things. So upskilling them, making sure that they know what's out there, getting them curious and interested in those things.
I think so, yeah. It's just a shortened version of the main flagship program, everyone. I mean, it's really focused on teaching the Jack and Jill youth about AI, really just getting them exposed to it, like Claudette said, and making sure they're aware of the technologies and how they can use this going forward.
We're looking at this as a beta too, Naye. So our flagship program is really student policed, if you will. So we're never in the business of having to micromanage any of our students. We do spend a lot of time talking to our students about being accountable in that flagship program. What we like about this Jack and Jill variant is that it's mother-led. So we see the mothers basically being the police. So I love that about it. And it's something that we're also looking at potentially being our model for our flagship program, where you get the parents involved and then there's some ownership of the process that resides in the parents' hands, if you will. Now, in terms of what we're actually doing in that program, I want to provide some more details there, right? So each student is going to receive over that 4-month period a certificate in AI fundamentals via our partner Data Camp. They're going to get exposed to 10 different Gen AI tools, including ChatGPT and a couple of those other conversational AI applications. They're going to also be privy to a capstone project, which I think we love about this variation, where we're going to actually pay them to do some work on behalf of their chapter that they're part of, a small business, or another nonprofit, or even our company, to leverage Gen AI to complete some work. Could be social media work, whatever it is, right? But we want the kids to actually experience their learning, earn some money from that. Then they're going to have to present at some point down the road to, I guess, at a chapter level in person, right, Naye? That capstone. And so we just think that experience can really solidify what could potentially become our permanent offering. So I think for this opportunity that we have with Jack and Jill, 40 students, I think about 39 students currently enrolled. We have 3 chapters currently participating. And I would be lying to you if I didn't say that I want to get in all 271 chapters. So the idea is I would love to continue, again, learning from this beta and then eventually put something in place that every student in Jack and Jill could potentially benefit from. Do you want to say anything about how you guys are seeing just the potential benefit even beyond the 4-month experience, Naye? You want to add anything there?
As mothers, we are very excited because we just started. We're still new. We don't really see too much right now, but we know the excitement is there. We're looking forward to the completion of the program and the children for what they have completed so far. The children are interested, and we like that. We feel confident and feel good about that, and know that if we can just keep them engaged, that will be a good sign, which I have no doubt that we wouldn't. They're excited about the upcoming Kahoot game and the opportunity to pretty much present what they've learned so far and moving forward to actually completing the modules. I, again, am looking to have you all roll this out in a regional, not only starting with Treasure Coast chapter, but just regionally and then hopefully nationally. So the opportunity is certainly there to present the information. And we are hopeful that the relationship between Sandai and Jack and Jill of America will be one that will benefit our children greatly.
Absolutely. And on that Kahoot gets you loot. So make sure the kids know that. So when they sign in, they participate in that game. We typically do about $150 per game. Typically have 5 winners. So we're definitely excited to get this first one underway. All right, you guys got any other questions for Naye before we move forward?
No, so we go ahead and move forward.
All right, so yeah, this next section, everybody, is for the audience. Let's watch this video. So this video, I think, again, we talked, I think, last podcast, maybe the prior podcast. Definitely, I know podcast 8, where we talked about our data gen for her offering. I don't think we talked as much about data, but a lot of women have lost jobs this year. And this video, I think, is from ABC News Live. I don't know who the anchor is who's talking, but I want to play about 3.5 minutes of this video, and then I'm going to open it up for you guys to offer some dialogue, okay?
All right, sounds good. So for the audience, the title of this video is going to be November U.S. Jobs Report Shows Surging Unemployment for Black Women.
The November jobs report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics released this week showing some staggering numbers in unemployment. The latest data finds that despite a job opportunity increase, nearly 700,000 women are still missing from the workforce. And for Black women, the unemployment has surged to roughly 7.5%, outpacing the broader workforce and sounding an alarm for the U.S. labor market. Award-winning gender economist Katika Roy recently released her analysis of these numbers, and she joins us now for more. Katika, thank you for being with us, as you have been before, to really break down what this means. Talk to us about what this crisis does show for the entire economy.
Well, you know what we're actually seeing is that if you look at Black women alone, Black women have lost almost 300,000 jobs, while men have gained 600,000 jobs. You're talking about a swing of almost 1 million jobs. That is not a slowdown. That is a redistribution of opportunity.
That is fascinating to hear you put it that way. And because most people would say, listen, these aren't 700,000 women who are just missing or electing to leave the workforce. Most of them were fired or pushed out, right? Is that what you would say?
Absolutely. That's exactly what we've seen. So when we look at since the pandemic, 700,000 women overall are missing from the labor force. And in that same time frame, over 6 million women have actually become eligible to participate in the labor force. So reasonably, you would think that their labor force participation increased, but that's not what we're seeing. And just since February, we've seen almost 100,000 men join the labor force. So you're really talking about not a personal choice. You're talking about structural exclusion.
So why are Black women, you think, being affected at this level? And do you think that it seems that they're being specifically targeted?
You know, I can't speak to what exactly is happening in terms of being specifically targeted. What I can tell you is that the numbers are staggering. When we look at Black women, over 600,000 have been economically sidelined. One of the things that we look at is that if you compare it to white women, Black women's labor force is about 5 times smaller than white women. If white women had been economically sidelined at the same rate as Black women, we would be talking about over 3 million white women. That's the entire labor force of Pennsylvania. I mean, this impact is massive.
That is so striking, especially when you put it, I mean, that simply in terms of the size of the workforce for white women in the state of Pennsylvania. Massachusetts Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, she called the rising unemployment rates of Black women a canary in the coal mine, an economic indicator for everyone else.
All right, you guys got any thoughts?
The biggest thing that stood out to me was the Pennsylvania point. So if white women were unemployed as much as Black women, that would be equal to the whole state of Pennsylvania in terms of their workforce. I don't know, that disparity is appalling to me, honestly. I would say a big reason for why the Black women are being pushed out, correct me if I'm wrong, would that be attributable to, government cuts?
I think it's mostly from that federal workforce. You got DEI in there. So a lot of Black, I hate to say it, a lot of Black people always think about, for lack of a better word, you got quant jobs, you got these qualitative jobs, or these, I call them soft jobs. All right. So a lot of us tend to go marketing, human resources, stuff like that. Stuff that's easy, replicatable by AI. Then you factor into this stuff, you got, AI, and then you got the DEI being all but dead. Companies just don't need entire departments. So between, I think, the federal cuts, which we know Department of Ed was hit hard, it had a lot of Black women there. You had the HHS, which is the Health and Human Services Agency. They were hit pretty hard. All right. So, and I'm not saying this was just intentional now, but the agencies that took the brunt of the cuts were those agencies that had greater representation of Black women. All right. Wow. So it's just, I think from that, and then just these policy decisions in terms of how we're navigating equitable treatment in the workplace with DEI being cut out, you think it's going to lead to job cuts. All right. And then the reporter said something about 300,000 Black women losing jobs, but 700,000 men gaining jobs.
Yeah, that swing, which is what I was going to bring up next.
Yeah.
Yep. So without necessarily knowing what those guys are doing, I can only expect that they are probably aligned to trades and AI or tech or something like that. That's the only thing I can say. Or construction, right? You got these data centers being built across the nation, right? So data centers, need a lot of labor. So between like trades, electricians, plumbers, things that are like builders, construct these data centers, I see a lot of jobs coming online for that. Women don't typically raise their hands for those kind of jobs.
And that's another interesting point I want to touch bases on, because I know a couple episodes before, we actually talked about this, how, again, with AI displacing a ton of workers, we thought that one of the protected fields or industries was specifically going to be healthcare. So with that being in mind, I would think that the number of women involved in the workforce would actually go up as opposed to going down. But again, obviously, this is showing the opposite. So
they're saying net for the year now. So I believe in October, I think we added a bunch of jobs. All right. So if you look at those jobs that were added, I'm almost certain they're probably mostly healthcare. So jobs are coming online. It's just saying that the net is negative.
Got you.
You see what I'm saying? So it looks like people are being forced out of certain fields, and opportunities still exist in health. I think healthcare. All right. I think there's a lot of opportunities there, but people have to be skilled up to transition to those roles, right? So I think there's a lag between when you're terminated and then you're now deciding what you're going to do with the rest of your career, getting retooled and reskilled, and then enter into that opportunity. It's going to take us a while. I mean, we haven't done any research on that, but I can't imagine it can be something that can be done in a couple of months.
No, but also should be stated, and equally as important is the fact that the new classification of professional roles that was recently rolled out by the federal government. This administration decided to or at least you don't have the certain fields classified as professional degrees, which in turn will affect the amount of money that is able to be borrowed, and we all know.
For nurses, right? You mean for nurses, right?
Nursing, physical therapists, you have a multitude of professionals in the healthcare field whose profession is not classified as professional, with nursing being the most popular one that we all know of. And so how that affect nurses, and that's nurses of all levels, your RNs at your bachelor's, your associates, your masters, nurse practitioners, your nurse anesthetists, your midwives. So what that does is that limits the amount of federal funding that is available for them to borrow in order to obtain those degrees. So some may argue that that may be a good thing because hopefully it will allow some of these schools to go down on the amount of money that they're charging for individuals to obtain these degrees. And others may argue that no, that not having made that profession classified as professional degree can also affect other things, such as maybe salary structure and other areas where that individual may find that they're limited to as far as movement, as far as becoming a more professional in that major and obtaining higher levels in their particular job setting, as far as obtaining their highest level.
So you think that's going to impact the number of people that would raise their hands to be nurses? You think it's going to hurt that? Or
what I do think it's going to affect is the amount of individuals go into the field. So some may argue that that's going to decrease the amount of nurses that are going to be available within the next 5 to 10 years. Because if it takes you 5-6 years to go to school to obtain this degree, some people may not be able to work and go to school at the same time. So they may borrow enough money to help with their living expenses until they can graduate and then go into the field and work and make enough money. You have some individuals that can work a full-time job or part-time and still go to school and not have to borrow as much in order to obtain that degree. But at any rate, it will affect the way that you are able to get that money, access that money if you need it. So, and that's not just nursing, it's other fields too. Physical therapy is one of them as well, that is one of the fields that you have to have it's doctorate. You have to have a doctorate as the entry level in order to become a physical therapist. So let me ask you something.
So you're saying the changing of this nomenclature from professional to non-professional,
the classification,
is it all based on federal loans?
Well, that's one aspect of it, but that is one aspect is the amount of money that you can borrow in order to, it's a limitation. If you go back and look at it, it limits you to the amount of federal money that you can borrow in order to get that degree. That classification change alone affects that. And other ways, it affects other things too, but that is one of the number one things that people are really looking at and saying, this is really going to affect the amount of people being able to obtain those degrees, and it's going to make a shortage. If you think you have a shortage now, you're really going to have a shortage in the near future of those professions.
Yeah. So let me read this. So after a recent rule change, nurses pursuing advanced degrees face lower federal borrowing limits starting July 2026, shifting from professional to standard graduate status, capping federal loans at $20,500 annually and $100,000 total, rather than the previous higher limits, which were about $50K per year and $200K total. So they cut it in half. The borrow limit has been cut in half for nursing degrees.
So what that means is, again, that is going to limit the amount of money that nurses or individuals will have access to in order to obtain that degree.
So does it take $200K to become a nurse? I'm asking. I don't know.
Well, it depends on what school you go to. There are schools that you can get your degree in 3 years. You can get your degree, and depending on what type of degree you're trying to attain, remember now, there's online programs that are obviously more convenient but may cost you more. There's private schools that tuition costs more. So it's going to take, that is going to affect your borrowing. That in itself affects the amount of money you pay, but now you're going to take into consideration what you can and cannot borrow. So the bottom line, the nutshell is, if you don't have the money to pay out of pocket, you don't have that money, you're not going to get that degree.
I'm just trying to make this correlation because we've talked on podcasts about white collar jobs versus blue collar jobs, Naye. So I having more of an effect on white collar. White collar are just those, we call them sexy jobs, right? Office jobs, admin job, manager, supervisor, white shirt on. That's how I think about them, like CPAs or something with ties and suits on, right? Blue collar would be someone who labors, right? Think about doctors, nurses. You guys are all considered blue collar, plumbers. And we've talked excessively about where we see the opportunities being. And we see blue collar being one of those opportunities for people who can't get into the white collar ring, right? And we think that white collar jobs are going to start to shrink. So we get down to blue collar, though. We always perceived the healthcare to be a great avenue for many people, just based on our understanding of home health aides and just us having an aging population and a lot of us being over 60 in like 15 years, right? I think everybody on this call, except the two guys, are going to be over 60 in 15 years. So it's going to be extreme need. I think half of the country is going to be over 60, by the way, in 15 years. So it's going to be extreme need for healthcare workers. So now you're saying now, though, that they're putting pressure on the possibility of that happening where we have enough people in the pipeline because they're reducing the amount that people can borrow to get skilled up to provide that benefit to the country.
That's correct. But again, the argument has been made that they're trying to control these higher education, these schools, institutions, right, forcing them to make things more affordable. Will it work? I don't know. I have no idea. All I know is that in order to go to school to become that nurse anesthetist, and that is that individual who helps and assists the anesthesiologist. So these are the people, and a lot of times you have a nurse anesthetist, not the anesthesiologist that is there putting you under before you go to surgery. That nurse midwife that is there to deliver a baby when you don't have a doctor available. You have that nurse midwife there. And of course, a nurse practitioner like myself, who's a primary care provider, when you have a shortage of doctors who are primary care, because nobody wants to go into primary care anymore. It doesn't pay. It doesn't pay like the surgeon, doesn't pay like the cardiologist, the dermatologist, the endocrinologist. So when you don't have access to those individuals, you still are able to get good quality care with the nurse practitioners who are able to deliver that care again. And it costs money. It costs money to obtain these degrees. It's an additional 2 to 3 years to become a nurse practitioner after you obtain your bachelor's degree. And it's not cheap. So
I would like to point out one thing though. So we talk about the pipeline. You're talking about home health aid workers, right? So correct me if I'm wrong, Auntie Naye, but a home health aide doesn't need a degree. Like they just need a high school diploma, right?
It's a certification. But you'd still cost to go to school in order to get that training to become a home health aide or what we call a certified nurse's assistant or medical technician. You still need to go through some type of training. And a lot of these trainings, unfortunately, are not in, they're in small colleges, or some of them can be found in technical colleges where the tuition should be a lot cheaper. They should be a lot cheaper and affordable when you think about your universities. So in that sense, putting a cap on borrowing on those type of individuals you may not see the trickle down effect on those because they don't cost as much as you would the professional, the nurse practitioner, the nurse, the bachelor's prepared nurse, the physical therapist, the respiratory therapist.
Some of these small businesses, like such as, the business that you have, or just any of these other healthcare small businesses, they can't become accredited to service the needs of the educational certifications for these jobs. You have to get it from universities or...
Well, the way that most of them, to become a nurse, to become a respiratory therapist or physical therapist, they require a higher level of degree and knowledge. So that's why those professions are at the university level. So let's back up and talk about the home health aide. Let's talk about the CNA. Those are the ones that are on the front line, just like Jayden and JJ said. Those are the ones that go into the home and they assist the elderly with their personal activities of daily living. That's their dressing, bathing, toileting. There's even a shortage of them. We don't have enough of them. Used to be in the past, you had companies, home health companies, who employed nurses and home health aides to go into the home. That was their specialty, right? That's what they did. But right now, you have so many of them that don't even have the aides to offer the individual. So you have the occupational therapists, you have the physical therapists that are going in doing the bathing and helping with the dressing and different things. And they're doing that as a skill. Of course, insurance is paying more for them to do that because there's a shortage of home health aides that they wouldn't pay that much for. So this is going to be the trickle effect. And how does that affect your health care premium? It shoots it up because now you have a physical therapist, somebody who has a doctorate degree going in, or a PTA, somebody who has a bachelor's degree or associate's degree going in and helping somebody with their bathing and their dressing, because now that's classified as a skill that they have to do because there's no aid to help to do that.
And that leads to burnout, by the way, because that person didn't go to school for that. See, it
does.
Goes back. Exactly. I didn't go to school for this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that home health stuff is like, I hate to say it now, it's lowly work. Like most home health aides might make $33,000 a year right now. That's working full time. It's a lowly paid position. We need 1 million of those. What I hear Naye saying is because we're conflicted, right? We need the care providers at the home health level. She's saying now they're taking these specialists, okay? And they're padding their responsibilities with these mundane tasks, responsibilities. That leads to burnout.
Exactly. And that's why you have so many therapists that don't go into home care because of that simple matter. Even nurses. Now you have nurses that don't want to do home care too, because again, a lot of the responsibilities and the burdens fall on them. And we're trained to do it. I mean, that's not beneath us. That's not anything that we don't know how to do. But when you can focus on the skill that you've been trained to do, it makes it a lot easier and a lot better for the patient than when you have to now do something that, that's not the skill that you're there to focus on, but you got to do that in addition to all the other things. It makes it really hard. And again, burnout, you're going to have a low number of individuals doing it. And so again, the trickle down effect, it's going to affect everybody.
Yeah. I said this a couple podcasts ago. I think that the administration is this is the federal, is trying to force our hands, man. I think it's happening, right? They're forcing our hands. They're going to force people to do certain jobs. Immigration crackdowns, right? Immigrants are leaving, right? People who work for less. What is that going to mean for people who are still here? Because we're still in the country.
That's a black job. That's a black job, Jeremy. You didn't know that?
I'm just telling you.
That's a black job. He said that the people who are here legally that work in the fields and work in the hotels and do home health care, that's for the people to do.
Listen. Didn't I tell y'all this? I didn't hear them say that, but I told y'all this, sons. That's what's happening here. All right. Now, it's an out. I'm going to talk about the out when we conclude, but don't mean you got to do that. Don't mean you got to do it. All right. It just means that if you're waiting for somebody to tell you what to do, you're waiting for somebody to call that play. I talked about this stuff with that podcast, maybe 9, like LeBron James and Steph Curry. They're in the basketball game and they're looking at the coach. Every time they run down the court, they're looking at the coach, waiting for the coach to tell them to shoot the ball. Oh, shoot it, Steph. Oh, dunk it, LeBron. Every time. That's a boring game, ain't it? That's how most of us live our lives. If you're waiting for somebody to call that play, you're going to be in the fields. That's their play call. Oh, you run to the fields. Oh, you do the home health take. You change the diapers. That's the play call they're going to call for you, right? So I think I got a solution to that, though. I'm going to conclude with that.
Oh, yeah. Before we move on, though, I wanted to also say, because we're talking about the reclassifications, that also applies to MBAs as well. They're no longer seen as professionals, so they've been... Ooh. Yeah, MBAs, they changed the bar limit for them as well.
I didn't know we were professionals. I thought we were just workers.
I mean...
MBA was a professional degree?
That's what they had it as. They had it as a professional. Yeah, they cut the cap in half as well for those degrees.
Right,
so I'm not sure how much...
We talked about... Listen, I said this last podcast, this last week, matter of fact, right? So... If Harvard is top 3 MBA school, I'm talking about across the globe. If 75% of them get jobs and 25 don't, I'm telling you, when I came out 2005, I want to say UVA was probably 90% placement. Within 3 months of graduation, you had a job. Harvard was almost 100%. Harvard's always up there. They graduate 1,000 kids a year. All of them always have jobs before they graduate. So if you're telling me now that 75% of them get jobs, and 25 are still looking for jobs a year later, it's something happening, man. And so for me, you don't need to have all these MBAs out there. That's what you're seeing here. They're saying, we're not going to just give you this money to go to a tier 3, a tier 4 MBA program, and then you're not going to get a job and then not pay your loans back. That's what that's saying to me. So rather than you getting an MBA, go over there and get that home health job. That's what they're doing. Absolutely.
Now for a quick commercial break to share some key program insights.
You've got grades, you've got ambition, but now you need experience that counts. The Data Gen Scholar Next Step Scholars Program delivers real-world data and AI assignments, tiered tracks, and visible proof of your skills. This is how you move from learning to earning. Explore your path now at datagenscholar.com/next-step-scholar-program.
Now back to the podcast.
All right. We had one other bit of data I want to talk before we move to the next part and conclude the podcast. I want one of you guys to talk about that Bureau of Labor Statistics chart that highlights the number of Black youth that are unemployed. Now, I know, Jayden, you had a report you want to summarize too. So let's take a few minutes and summarize those two elements. I just think between the Black women and then the Black youth, the fact that we have Jack and Jill here, which is a mother-led or a Black woman-led organization that's all about empowering youth, I think it's critical for us to talk about those two data points, right? And then I want to underscore the importance of having these kinds of organizations around and why they need to even be bolstered to a greater degree, right? That's what I want to do with this. So let's talk about this data report, and then we'll move on to the back half of the podcast. So this is some data. Again, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, this is the government agency responsible for producing unemployment data each month, unemployment data. So, again, we've been following this since early part of the year, and the numbers have been paltry, right? I know back in July, or it was June, the numbers were so bad that President Trump fired the director of this agency. And he since put another person in, but he was so ticked off with the results that he was seeing, he thought that she was gaming the numbers. So the numbers have been horrible throughout the year in terms of employment. I believe we had our first month of successful hiring was last month. I think we added about 120,000 people to payrolls. But what we're looking at now on the screen, and the audience, you guys can't see this, but this is a report that summarizes the 2024 third quarter of the year versus 2025 third quarter of the year. Unemployment by age. So this chart has 16 years all the way up to 65 years and older. But we're not going to concentrate on the older numbers. Black youth, okay? It says here in 2024 third quarter, 16 years of age to 19 years of age. Unemployment for Black youth was 17.3% versus this year is 22.7%. All right. Look at that for white youth, 12.6 last year, 12.7 this year. So it's almost double the unemployment, Blacks versus whites. Asians in there around 17 and 14. So Asians are about 14 this year, youth, and Hispanic Latino about 17.5. Black youth are drastically underemployed or unemployed relative to these other ethnicities. And I don't know why. Of course, it's going to be educational opportunities, some other stuff there, but it just warrants, for me, significant concern. Now, I also studied this a little bit further last night as I was getting my prep, and I learned that Blacks youth have always hovered around 20% unemployment, which has always been significantly higher than everybody else, except maybe the Latinos. This has been going on for at least 20, 25 years. And my concern here is AI is here. My concern is AI is here. A lot of these jobs that our youth will be doing, think about like CVS, packing groceries, and you name it, all those entry jobs, retail jobs, fast food jobs, those jobs are dissipating. So what kinds of opportunities are our youth going to have? I mean, across the board. It's 14%, 12%. That's not a great number. If you think about the overall unemployment rate being about 4.5%, right? I think it's about 3.2% for whites, 7.5% unemployment for Black women, 16.3% for Black men, which is much higher than average, right? But you start looking at 12 and 17 and 20% unemployment based on our age classification here, that's a problem. I mean, these are our leaders of tomorrow that they can't get valid job experience. And this actually goes back to what we're talking about with that Data Gen Scholar, Next Step Scholar program, Jayden.
Yeah.
But these kids need experience. How do you expect them to become leaders? Mm-hmm. All right, so let's talk about this center report, JJ, Jayden, and then we're going to move to the back end of the podcast.
So everyone, this report is titled High Joblessness for Black Youth. More than 500,000 jobs are needed. All right. Now, this was published by the folks over at the Center for Economic and Policy Research back in August of 2022, so about a few years ago. And basically, what they did in this report was they just compared the rates, the unemployment rates as far as the white youth in America versus Black youth. And when we say youth, we're talking about individuals that are between the ages of 16 and 24. But look at, again, those two measures, white versus Black, and it basically just took out a couple of key points that I wanted to mention on this podcast. So the first is, when we go back to the first half of 2022, right, the overall unemployment rate for the entire nation was around 3.8%. All right, so when we look at the white youth specifically, their unemployment rate was at about 7.3%, and then black youth, it was actually double or almost double, 14.2%. All right, so just keep that in mind. Again, the unemployment rate, as Jeremy Sr. just mentioned, when it comes to black youth versus white youth, it's always been doubled really since, I think he said 2002. The report says 2007. It's been that same way. Now, again, those numbers are already shockingly high, all right? But again, that's just the unemployment rate. What this report argues is that the unemployment rate actually isn't the best measure to look at when it comes to the true, I guess you could say, number of black youth that do not have a job. And the reason why they say that is because that unemployment rate only takes into account individuals that are actively looking for work. That means that individuals that aren't looking for work and they're passive for free time, or those that have just flat out completely quit looking for work, they're not counted in that number. So in order to actually account for those individuals, this report says you have to look at the jobless rate. And to calculate the jobless rate, you just take 100%, the entire population, minus the employment rate, and that's going to give you the jobless rate. So when they did that for black youth specifically, that rate was at 56.7%. That means more than half of the black youth, again, in 2022, did not have a job, right? That's shocking. And again, that's 2022. When you jump to 2025 with AI, of course, you got immigration, you got all this other stuff that they're competing with. We can only imagine how high that number is. And then what they're saying is, on top of that is, in order for those, again, 57% of unemployed youth that are jobless right now, black youth that is, in order for them to get jobs, America is going to need to introduce around 500,000 jobs in total. And again, like I said, that's in 2022. So we can only imagine how these numbers are right now for 2025.
That ain't happening.
Yeah, so how much jobs have we added this year? It was like 1 million, right? Or was that done? I was once removed. We removed 1 million jobs. So how much jobs have we added in total this year? Does anyone know that number?
I don't know. I can't imagine that many.
So 500,000 is very much not possible. It's not going to happen, right? So just one thing I would say for this report as well is they talked about just like the reason why we're seeing these big gaps, right? And one thing it pointed out was the social capital that black people often lack. So just tying that in, like a lot of kids, they get opportunities from parents, associates, connections that they have, the social networks that they have that give them, recommendations that get them into the door. Black people don't have that. So earlier on, we talked about that. Auntie Naye, you talked about how Jack and Jill helps kids, establish a network, allow them to be able to increase their public speaking skills. But the most important thing is to give them access to a network, like black people who are willing to pull them up the ladder with them. And I think that that's just the biggest thing that we have to bring to youth, like to close this gap, is that we have to have people involved in programming. Like they have to be doing things where they're surrounded by like-minded individuals who are willing to pull them up alongside them. So,
yeah, I totally agree with that. And I definitely think that goes also back to what Jeremy was talking about the parents being involved and pulling their kids and making sure that they see their genius within themselves. It's baffling just to see the number. Over 500,000 jobs are needed just to fill that gap. Just seems unobtainable, actually. So it's like, what do we do? How do we do as a community? How do we jump in and try to help that? I know that our Next Steps program, like Jeremy had talked about, really would, help these students that are out here struggling, that are not finding any jobs that are either, worthy of their time or they feel hopeless. I don't know. But definitely talking about our Next Steps program, like getting them upskilled, bridging the gaps, getting them those projects that they need to upskill their level of understanding of how the workforce works is totally essential.
There are so many different programs that Jack and Jill offer that I'm just so incredibly proud of. But I didn't mention earlier that we also emphasize with our children the importance of creating opportunities for yourself. We try to, as an organization, we try to highlight those children and youth that have started their own businesses and doing their own things. And we try to share that within the community itself and allow other members to support the youth that have started doing their own things. And we encourage our kids to be entrepreneurs. And we emphasize the fact that that's what is going to be needed. And, you have to create the opportunity for yourself if you want to do what your passion is. And one of the things that we also provide for them is a platform during national conventions, regional conventions, and during teen conference for them to share what their talent is and what their business is. So again, we can provide them that opportunity for others to support them.
I totally agree.
Yeah, man, I just think it comes down to just being passionate. I think the 500,000 jobs for some black kids, that ain't happen. I mean, you put that into context with white kids. How many jobs do they need? Asian kids, Latino kids, right? You probably talking about 3 million jobs just for kids. And what we do know is Gen Zers, 4.5 million of them, or 4 million of them, were out of work back in June or July. We know this already. Right? And these kids I'm assuming we're looking for work. We could play all kind of videos there for kids who have college degrees who can't find work. You got kids who don't have degrees, they have the same level of unemployment rate. College degree versus not college degree, same ages. So we just have a dilemma. And I think the only solution is it has to be entrepreneurship. All right. It has to be entrepreneurship. It has to be people being comfortable not getting a paycheck. That's what entrepreneurship is. It's not about starting a business up and getting paid tomorrow. It's about a lot of sacrifice, and that's what people don't understand. So we have to find a way to educate our youth that one of the ways, and I'm going to talk about this in my closeout, is entrepreneurship, but that requires a lot of sacrifice. And
property. I own my own commercial building. I own my own land. So be able to, I don't lease from anybody. Everything that I have in my clinic is paid for, is bought by the company and is owned by the company. So it's not like somebody can come and tell me tomorrow, hey, you have to leave or I'm tripling your rent and you can't afford to be here. That's not how it works. So you got to have that mind frame that, hey, this is what you want to do. This is what you got to do. And you got to go for it.
Yep. And you can't be waiting on nobody to save you, by the way. See? You have to save yourself, right? And that was another thing we talked about. We could talk all day about this stuff, man, but what I want to do is let's go ahead and close out. I think we've talked at length about the value that Jack and Jill offers to the families it represents. I think we talked at length about what that looks like just in terms of indirect effect on the globe, in terms of what these are Jack and Jill students, are capable of doing or will be capable of doing. We've also talked about the value of the Data Gen Scholar Jack and Jill program and our hope for that program to be able to proliferate throughout the Jack and Jill community. We also talked at length here about two alarming factors, right? One is being the numbers of African-American women, or women in general, that have lost their jobs this year. And then this lingering thing we didn't know about, which is unemployed youth, unemployed black youth, okay? And I would venture to say that the white, Latino, and Asian numbers are paltry as well. So I just think there's a lot of work just needs to be done. And I'm excited about what we can do with our programs and be able to affect some of those numbers, but we can't employ 500,000 kids. So I just think we still have our work cut out for us as a country, but I see an avenue that AI can help with that.
Now, for a quick commercial break to share some key program insights.
Imagine a world where every student, parent, and professional has access to the tools shaping tomorrow's economy. That's what we're building at Sandai Cares, a movement to democratize data and AI education for all. Join us in empowering communities to create, innovate, and lead through technology. Discover how you can get involved at sandaicares.org.
Now back to the podcast.
Now, what I want to do now is I want to conclude the podcast, and what we typically do in this segment is we let our guests say a couple of closing remarks, just things you want to highlight from the podcast or other thoughts you might have, things you want to share with the audience before you depart. And I'll let the boys conclude, and I'm going to say some final words, and then we can close out the podcast. So, Claudette, you or Naye, whichever wants to go, I'll let you guys say a few words.
Okay, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity, and thank you all for doing what you're doing. I do understand that your job is not easy, but you do it day to day. So thank you for this platform. Thank you for the Data Gen opportunity, and I look forward to our future endeavors together. Thank you.
Absolutely. Claudette?
I just want to say thank you. It was a great podcast. It was very informative. Learned a lot of shocking factors about our tomorrows, but we can make a difference. I came up with my own daily affirmation. It's called Swish. Strive without ignoring simple habits is what it means. So I leave you with that. And that's it.
And did you want to talk about that a little bit? So we also have our students, Naye. We have them coining their own, we call them mantras. We think that these mantras can serve as like lifelong lessons or cheerleaders, if you will.
Yeah, sure.
They help us. Yeah. So that's what Claudette's talking about. Do you want to talk more about that, Claudette, just in terms of how we can integrate that into our Data Gen program?
The daily affirmations remind you of something that you do every day to help you keep pressing forward. So it's really more for you as an individual and you trying to take your daily habits and creating better things for you to achieve the goals that you desire in your life. So That's what we try to offer for our students in our programs. And that's what I would say about that.
I like that.
All right, Jayden, JJ.
Well, thank you for joining today's podcast episode. It was a pleasure having you both on. Definitely a pleasure discussing everything with you guys. You know, it's always good hearing some different voices. I know the audience, they appreciate it as well. And speaking of the audience, I want to thank you guys for tuning in as always, listening to us. Of course, we're here to give you guys not only the facts, but also our opinions as well. We're not going to try to sway you in anything. We're just here to tell you guys what we found. And then, of course, present you guys with the data so that you can make your own decisions from there. But again, thank you all for joining. We always try to, like I said, give you guys something that you can take away. So hopefully we did that. And hopefully we can get you guys on the next one.
All right, Jayden.
Yeah, just to follow suit. And thank you for joining us today. It was a great podcast. My wrap-up message would just be directed more so to like Black youth. And we talked about earlier, the unemployment rates between Black and whites are staggering currently. My message would be to try to tie yourself into networks. Try to look for programs like Jack and Jill and Data Gen Scholars and try to just get around people who can pull you to that next level, because oftentimes it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. So just make that your highest priority if you're a young person. I'm in the same bucket as you guys, Black, and I'm a youth as well. So just try to prepare yourself the best you can for tomorrow and always lead with that. But yeah, thank you everyone for hopping on. It was a great episode.
Yeah, thank you. And again, thank you, Claudette, for hopping on. Obviously, I talk to you every week. Naye, it's been a long time since we talked. So again, having you up in Virginia for a couple of days and being able to get you on this podcast is something that we can continue to celebrate. But I think these podcasts have been opportunities to discover ways for us to improve what we do and just become more insightful around where opportunities exist. And then for us, it's always figuring out how to use data and AI to come up with solutions. And I just think with the advent of AI, we as people of color, we have to figure out how to leverage it. We have to figure it out. And when I look at these job numbers for youth, 15-20% unemployment. And now JJ is saying, based on some new factor, it's half of youth Black need jobs. It just says that we have to sound some type of alarm. And there has to be more of a concerted effort across whatever sororities, fraternities, churches, any organizations that we have within our communities to try to congeal and to come up with a consistent message. Now, what I want to talk about for me, I talked about Curtis when we started this conversation, but I've had over my career about 5 bosses. And every time I think about a boss, it's something I do. I don't talk about a lot of stuff a lot with people, but I try to think annually about people who've been integral for me in terms of my progression. And I look at each person as a stepping stone. Not saying I'm stepping on them or over them, just being a person or persons that have helped me get to my next level or foundation or altitude. And I always try to give assignment, like what skill, what did I learn from that person? So I think about all my bosses the same way. And I had, again, 5 bosses. The Burger King boss was Curtis. First job out of undergrad was Florida Power and Light. And my boss there was this guy named Jose Morero. Jose taught me how to be confident. Like when I first took my job with FPL, I was always very nervous to talk about my projects with Jose. He's my boss. I would ask him a lot of questions. He would get angry with me. But I learned to have confidence in what you're presenting, and you'll always get the feedback you want, right? So I learned that from Jose. My next boss was in DC with the charter schools, okay? So I had 2 bosses there. Person was a female, Miss Baker, older lady. You're talking about super articulate, Miss Josephine Baker. She taught me how to communicate effectively, how to articulate, okay? When she retired, I had this guy, HBS guy, Scott Pierce. Scott was probably the boss that I'm most fond of. We would have tons of conversations about just being curious about the world. And one thing he would always try to persuade me to understand is the need to surround myself with what he called A's. Now, this guy's HBS, multi-millionaire at 37, 38. I think he retired from AOL early in life, just rich. But he would always talk about, Jerry, man, listen, you got to surround yourself with A's, man. You got to hire people who are A's. You hire B's, C's, and D's, they're going to stress you out. And I would always say to Scott, man, but Scott, man, you know I'm Black, right? So if Not a lot of A's where I come from, man. Not an A in terms of like aptitude and educational attainment, okay? I said, so people who I aspire to be around each day aren't like me. I want to pull them up. And I've gone through life last 10, 15 years, just having that conversation with him. And I've experienced a lot of B's and C's, even as an entrepreneur. And I would say for me as entrepreneur, I've been around for about 6 years with Sandai. I've lost a lot of money experimenting with team members. Okay, I've lost a lot of money. So the thing I want to say here today is I just think where we are in terms of this hiring marketplace, we got kids. We've talked for about 4 or 5 podcasts about people can't get jobs. Gen Zers can't get jobs. These are the future leaders of tomorrow who are in their formative years as professionals, and they can't get those same life lessons that we have gotten. I think that ultimately where things have to improve is we have to give kids these answers. The first thing that comes to mind, actually 2 things come to my mind on this as I prepare for the podcast this morning. The first is the power of positive thought. The power of positive thought. There's a phrase, you're the master of your fate and the captain of your soul. And what that basically just refers to is the power of positive thought. We have to find a way to have kids, even during these trying times where, again, you think about what's happening just politically, immigration crackdowns, which means we have fewer immigrants to do some of this laborious work. You have DEI being all but eliminated in corporate settings as well as academic settings. Just means that it may be harder for us to get certain jobs in corporate America. When I say us, people of color, as well as you think in academia, it may be harder for us to get into certain colleges and universities. So then when you add to this complexity that AI is presenting in terms of allowing companies to reimagine their workforces, it's a trying time for a lot of us. But anytime you're going through a trying time, it's best to maintain faith and maintain positive thought. And I think it's critically important that we think about thought that is really spent more on constructive thought and less on destructive thought, okay? It's easy for someone to feel as though they're being punished or that there's some ill they're being subjugated to. So I just think we have to find a way, and really excited about what we're gonna do with Jack and Jill. I think it's important that we try to, as I said earlier, about infusing data, more data into, I think, how we're gonna set this program up to help these kids think about just how you can build up that positive thought and optimism. And I'm certain a lot of the programming that they being subjected to via the Jack and Jill program, that a lot of that's already happening. But I think it's important for us, Sandai, to make certain that we're doing our part to support what's already being done. And again, I just think that opportunity to help students and anyone else that's privy to our content, just maintain positive thought, wealth-driven concepts as often as possible, and less focus on poverty thinking, okay? The last thing I want to say is, when I got up this morning, I talk about like nuggets sometimes surfacing, and I don't know what podcast it was, but I talked a lot about these downloads I get sometimes when I'm just in a quiet environment. Maybe it's early in the morning, or in this case, as I prepared for this podcast, I came up with this phrase, AI, the answer. So AI dash the answer, or the answer to AI to some degree is something. And this phrase is just AI dash THE answer. And it reminded me of this basketball player. His name was Allen Iverson. I think he's actually from Virginia. A pretty great player, played for Georgetown University, went on to the pros, played for the Philadelphia 76ers for a long time, but a small guy who overcame significant odds on a variety of different levels. He almost didn't make it to college. He was a top basketball player here in Virginia as a high school athlete. I want to say he was like the best player in the state when the time he came out of high school in football and basketball, but ran into some trouble, and that trouble almost prevented him from making it to college and eventually the pros. But he was known as the answer. And as I was putting together this podcast prep today, again, I came up with the AI is the answer, okay? And then the of that phrase to me is representative of 3 categories of opportunity that I think our youth need to become more aware of. The first is T, is trades, all right? The second is H for healthcare, and the third is E for entrepreneurship. I think that we have to do as much as we can to help our students fully understand the opportunities that are going to be presented as a result of AI in all those arenas. I'm very optimistic about where things are going to head, but I fully believe that we have to do more to support underrepresented populations, uninformed communities, learn the power of AI. And again, as I always say, use it to empower ourselves and empower our communities.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Data, Dollars, and Dynasty. The views and opinions expressed in this episode are those of the individual speakers and do not reflect the views and opinions of Sandai Global or Sandai Cares. Visit us on our website at datadollarsdynasty.com to learn more about our companies and our priorities. Also, follow us on social media at Data Dollars Dynasty. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Thanks again for tuning in. We look forward to catching you on the next episode.